Dreaming for night, sharpening night, booming the club, fierce like dawn. Dreaming for night, sharpening night. On my body, all this lying. On my body, all this
Welcome to the BANGover Podcast album anniversary history breakdown super phantomship. I'm Scott Allen. As always, Chris Myers
How's it going?
running the music over there, the board, all the things. He brought the chords today. And what are we doing? What are we talking about today?
Tad's Infrared Riding Hood.
Tad, Infrared's Riding Hood. His album came out in 1995, so this makes it 15-year anniversary.
It'd be the 25th year.
I'm not doing math right. Oh, right.
25th
95.
year. Yeah.
25 fucking years.
25 years.
Wow. And where to get started? Going back, talking about the Seattle music scene again. We're there in that time frame, 1995. Last album, right?
Their last album, yes.
Yeah. And before the initial breakup or the...
They just put out a new
wait.
live album that's out. It has like old songs from like the first couple albums, but it just kind of came out recently, but it's just a live album. So that kind of came out of nowhere, but yeah.
I think, I don't know if this just came out. I think it might have said 2016, but Salt Lick got a remix or remaster. And that was the CD they did with Steve Albini, which very just fucking noisy, you know? Noisy and weird, and kind of like this album a little bit, you know, from for all the listeners out there that might not know Tad, Seattle rock band, metal band, sludge, you know, right there, touring with bands like Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, Mudhoney, and this is just one of those bands that was there kicking ass that no one maybe got to hear, you know?
Yeah.
Or they didn't branch out. They didn't get the commercial success of most of these bands, you know? In some way, shape, or form, they just kind of always had a, you know, like just a bad draw, you know, just a little bit of bad luck here and there, just because their attitude, the way they looked, the way they played, is just, you just can't sell that stuff. You know what I mean?
Well, I think they had a lot of the cards were kind of stacked against them in a lot
Always,
of ways because almost a little bit in this vein of like that Grand Funk where you just couldn't catch a break.
That's what I kept thinking too.
Where it's like legal trouble after legal trouble of like an album, like a piece of promotion comes out and you get sued for it. It's always that. Like first it's the it
one
was
thing
that
after another. Yeah.
Starts with the couple, you know, that couple image for 8-Way Santa that then gets, well, I mean, it actually goes all the way back to the conception of the name.
I know,
Tad.
right?
Like,
and just,
how do you sell that?
And their live performance, you know?
Yeah.
And the type of people they draw.
Yeah. And then you just follow it up with God's Balls.
Yeah.
How do you sell that? And then,
you can't.
And so after that, it just kind of, then you start to get into those legal troubles, which we can get into, kind of like, that's kind of the...
Yeah, in the second half of this.
Yeah.
Just want to do a little bit of explaining who Tad is and where they come from, just in case no one knows. And the majority of our research today was taken from a documentary that Chris sent me from, is it Noisy and Vice?
It's on YouTube through Noisy's channel, but it's kind of like a Vice thing also.
Right.
You can buy it and rent it. It's its own documentary.
Noisy does a lot of like documentaries on bands, music stuff of like the branch of Vice, and Vice is all around world news. If you don't know who Vice is, I mean, come on, they have their own channel. And the name of the documentary is Busted Circuits and Ringing Ears of Found Tapes.
Yeah. It's got a bunch of good interviews in it. It's got pretty much everybody from that scene.
Yeah.
Played with them, hung out with them, even interviews from them. Besides, who was it?
There's a couple of people I wish I would have saw on there.
Steve.
Maybe they didn't have the time.
No, he was in it. It was Gary, the other guitar player. He wasn't interviewed for it. He declined to be interviewed.
Yeah, I didn't hear from like the Melvins or anything, or Dave Grohl. Like I know that was a different drummer when they were touring together. They were touring with Chad Chandler.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh right, Chad was in the band at that point.
That must have
been like the
a
Bleach
crazy,
days.
crazy van. All you have Nirvana and Tad.
I know, just stacked in European tour. That's so crazy. They just send you just like go see what you can do.
Yeah. Before they broke and stuff. So,
I mean, giving y'all a little bit of the backstory here. We can talk about our experiences, mine and Chris, about the first time we heard Ted. And pretty much it falls into getting into bands like Mudhoney and the Melvins,
it's like that
Jesus Lizard, and they're one of those bands that are in that catalog or just in that grouping,
Yeah. What is it? The 7 Degrees of like Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
At that time, it was, for us growing up, it was 7 Degrees of Nirvana. So it's like whoever
touched Nirvana, and then
we liked,
we like, branch off.
So it's like, oh, Nirvana was into Green River. Who was the Green River? Oh, that's part Mudhoney and part this. Oh, okay, we'll listen to those bands. Oh, Mudhoney played with this band. Oh, it was this band. So you start to like just venture out with bands who were associated with each other. And Tad kind of fell into that music discovery phase and just consumption for me. Whereas
it was one of the CDs that was going to be in the you go to genre in a music store, it's going to be under grunge, slash
they always
rock.
stood out though. Like I always gravitated towards their sound because it was heavier. It had that real heaviness to it compared to other grunge bands.
They're not like any other grunge bands, in my opinion. I mean, you get, from the first song that we just listened to there, Bullhorn was the first song we played for y'all. Second song, excuse me, on the album. Oh man, this heavy as balls. I can't even talk. And you can kind of get the idea or like the sense of like, oh, you can hear their Seattle influence roots. I mean, you get a little bit of like Dinosaur Jr. in there by those harmonies in the choruses, in the chorus, if you will.
I think they took the best of like the whole genre. They had like those soft moments, but then also they were like, of the heavy bands, they were probably the heaviest band. You know what I mean?
Like, for real.
I think
put some headphones on. If you're listening to this on headphones, you probably had to turn it down for that first song because it's like, holy shit, you didn't expect that much bass.
It's like metal, you know what I mean? It's almost on that. That's kind of like they are compared to bands like Alice in Chains and Soundgarden because they've played with them. That opening tour where they opened for them. It's like it makes sense. They are like, of all those bands, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, those are like the metal of the grunge. But even Tad may even be heavier than them.
Oh yeah, because it's nasty, it's dirty, it's fast, it's a constant throughout. There's really, you do get those ideas of like ballad or like just singing in there, but it is surrounded in just that bass. Really, that bass and those loud drums and then the guitar gets wacky and weird. I don't know. Like a lot of these songs in this album just they go one way. As soon as it starts, you're like, okay. And then out of nowhere it just switches to something. It's just completely different feel. You didn't think that they were gonna go there,
Yeah.
And that's the best way to describe them. It's like if you took Mudhoney and the Melvins and slammed them together, you get the idea of what this is gonna sound like.
Yeah.
My first impression listening to their older albums was because, Inhaler is the first one the commercial success album
That
we all
is
heard
my favorite,
first.
or at least I
Yeah.
think that's of Tad. I think that's their magnus opus in a way, kind of, where it's like these songs
Yeah, they
are
had
so
and they had the money to
creative,
go in there and do it.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they just sound really good. Like, it was just the production, everything around that album was good. It just that album also kind of is a part of the tragic history too.
It's like
so.
every single time. But we'll get into that more. I was starting to think of Big Black, and then, you know, just reading a little bit about the album. I was listening to Salt Lick, which was second album, I
EP,
should say, EP.
yeah.
What, you know, kind of demo-y thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
So that was
have Steve Albini do it, and it's like, oh, well, that makes sense
Yeah.
because Big Black was Steve Albini's band, and it has that same feel. Very derivative, industrial. These drum
it's
beats
supposed to be
just
a more
work this.
raw.
It's like
Yeah.
the drum beats don't change, you know. It's like it's really just like, whoa.
One of the co-founders from Sub Pop was saying that was their sound live. Like, they, you know, and when everyone's like trying to capture that he did the best job of capturing that
What they sounded like live
on that
Yeah.
release.
And that was back in 1990, which that album, I know all I got to listen to was the remaster, but Jesus Christ, it is heavy, you know?
Yeah.
And again, this might be one of those bands that are like lost to people, and that's why we really wanted to do an episode on it, because we were like, this band is so awesome, but
It's
they
lost,
never had
but
their
it's also
opportunity. Yeah.
kind of like,
You'll find it. It's like a cult classic.
yeah, like it you know, I'm almost hesitant to, I'm trying to pick the right word, because it's not, they did get lost, but in the same way they kind of didn't. It's like,
Everyone knew it, but it was more
Yeah.
like the bands around them knew it.
yeah, because
Besides, like, for a huge audience, like all the bands were like, holy shit, this
they're
is the
still
best
revered,
band
exactly,
in the world.
yeah, like
you know?
their peers look at them as
Yeah.
like, holy,
So highly, because they're geniuses, and they just come up with this off, like, out of nowhere. Just top of their head. It's just fucking go.
and I think maybe it's that if they didn't have as much commercial trouble as they did, I think they would have blown up, like, you know, Soundgarden or Alice in Chains or any of these bands on a creative level. You know, I think they suffered too much.
It's just the industry.
The industry, but
just
it's also-
beat the fuck out of them.
Yeah.
But everything, just the timing of where we're
Yeah.
at. This is 1995, and oh my god, we're like in the think about what's going on in 1995, like fucking satanic panic and shit like that. So like we're getting those fucking stickers on
stickers,
albums.
we're also
those
going through-
pictures, and you're like, moms are just fucking going to court. And
There's a wave
screaming
of
at-
drugs
yeah,
hitting music at this time. That's kind of
as well, making it not look so well when you
Yeah.
hear stories about like Kurt Cobain, like almost ODing and
Well,
then dying.
we're
and
coming
then
out of the 80s, which was the
hearing this shit,
cocaine
yeah.
era, and then we're getting into this. People are looking for the next thing, and it starts to get into this heroin phase. Where
I mean,
we start,
and being in Seattle, it rains a little too much there, right? And it's always gray, so you
Yeah.
can see why people write that style of music and do drugs. It's a very depressing place, it looks like. Shout out to Bria Bill. She's not here. She would argue that it's a beautiful place.
so I mean, getting back to their start, you know, and just the whole band. So, yeah,
1988.
it gets 88, and Tad, Thomas Andrew Doyle, he is in a band. What is it, H Hour? He played drums in this band, and he decides, you know what, I want to play guitar and sing. So he gets a guitar, gets an amplifier, and he starts writing music. And he writes a whole song, basically, you know, and performs it. And that essentially is what Sub Pop releases, which is the first Tad single, which is just all him doing everything. And that comes out as that single under Sub Pop, and that's kind of one of the first Sub Pop releases also, and bands that they kind of sign. I don't know if it's the first, but it is one of the first.
They did a lot of those compilation albums.
Yeah.
Just putting like all their artists on one album.
It's just like artists
So
they
you had,
liked in the
yeah,
area.
Sub Pop 200 and stuff like that. I think we had a couple of those sitting around here on the CD shelf.
And so he gets Kurt Danielson, who is in a band called Bundle of Hiss, who had played with H Hour on previous gigs and stuff, and so they were kind of acquaintances. Says, "Hey, come play bass for me." Basically, this single that Tad did was starting to pick up some steam. People were liking it. He then decides to put a band together, kind of around this idea. So he gets Kurt. Kurt agrees to do it. They then recruit drummer Steve Weed from formerly of Skinyard and guitarist Gary Thorstensen.
Good job.
Yeah. And that's the original lineup. And then they signed Sub Pop, and then they release Daisy Ritual Dance on Sub Pop.
And this is to go back. This from him recording that first EP by himself, and then getting the band together and performing live for the first time and recording another EP.
Yeah. Recording an album. They record.
Weeks.
Well, they do these singles, and then they do God's Balls.
Weeks, for God's sakes, of playing together and just throwing it. It's just, I don't know, magic was in the air, like it just worked when these people met each other. Kurt meeting Tad, and the guitar player is awesome too, and so is that drummer, but let's be honest, it's kind of those two guys that drove the horse. It does take the whole band, but we know it because of these two guys always sticking with it.
Yeah. And so that's when they work with Jack Endino, one of the legendary Sub Pop producers. And they do God's Balls, and that was released in 90?
1989.
89, that's right. Yes. The Salt Lake God's Balls thing was 90.
Right.
After. So, they do that. They also, that's when, they do March 90s, where they do the Salt Lake EP with Steve Albini, and that had the Wood Goblin song, which
awesome music video.
Was the music video they submitted to MTV, and then MTV turned it down because it
because why? I would love to hear the reason why. Some dumbass fucking excuse. Seriously?
What did they say? It was too ugly or something like that?
Yeah.
Was that one?
Maybe. It's probably just too under budget, and it's who are all these guys with the shaky cam,
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of just homemade music videos.
Yeah.
And some bands just do it well, you know what I mean? Especially bands in this era, man. So many. Remember that Sonic Youth CD? They made a music video for every song.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So around this time they put out those two, and that's when they go on that European co-headline tour with Nirvana, because Nirvana had just done Bleach and stuff. Sub Pop is kind of
7 people in one van.
Yeah, and that just sounds like an epic show. They're co-headlining, so they're switching off every other date besides Europe, because they said Tad had a media presence in Europe, so Tad kind of headlined.
Yeah, and just
part of Europe's stuff. So, or some parts.
I'm quoting Chris Novoselic saying that it just felt like Tad was bigger than they were. Tad was awesome. They were very skilled musicians. Nirvana was just getting their bearings straight, especially on this tour, trying to get their sound down. But Tad always had it.
Tad
was came out the gates, just whoop ass.
They'd be the inspiration for some Nirvana songs too.
Oh my god, yeah.
So that was that whole European tour that concludes, and they work on their second album, full length album, 8-Way Santa, in '91, and this is by Butch Vig. So by this time they've already worked with 3 super producers. You know what I mean?
Every year pulling out a fucking album.
Yeah, pulling out something. And then this album is a little bit more kind of not as I don't want to say heavy, but it's not as grimy, it's more pop orientated as it would claim.
It's kind of from Salt Lake, and please, all all the listeners go out and listen to both these albums.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you can hear the difference, and especially when you get to Inhaler and Infinite Riding Hood, you know exactly where it all comes from. You know what I mean? Because they're just like becoming a band. You know,
Yeah.
working things out, if you will.
So yeah, and that's kind of where we get into these legal issues.
Dear God.
Yeah. So they put out Eight Way Santa, and first it starts with the album cover because it's this cover. They found a scrapbook in a thrift store that had some old pictures in it.
Go ahead and Google this now, and so you can see the picture.
Yeah.
It's just very 70s looking.
Yeah, it's big old mustache and bandana, bra.
Just look like an old 70s porno.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Right?
it does. So yeah, they find this photo album book in a thrift store. They were going to replace the photos, right? But some of the photos in there were really cool. One of them turns out to be this infamous photo of these two people. And they take it to one of the, I guess, producers of Sub Pop or one of the owners or something, the art director, forgot who exactly. And they're like, oh, this is great. Can we take this and use it? They're like, yeah, sure. They take it, they alter it a little bit, throw some of that like weird, that's why it looks yellow and blue. And they kind of
distort it.
Did some color changing to it. And then they release it. The lady sees the album.
How?
At a record store because they're LPs at this point. You know, they're not selling CDs, so the album is humongous. So
everyone's like, have you heard of this? And I'm like, that's fucking me.
Yeah, so she sees it. She's like,
damn.
Apparently,
What a small town.
Yeah. So apparently she sees it. They sue the band. They have to change the album cover. This was before they broke too. Nirvana is just now working on Nevermind. Is 91, right? So it's about to break. Everything's
about to change.
Yeah.
And this album could have been
it was supposed to be
Yeah.
their break, you know, on that same time. So but they have to go through this quick album change where you're swapping the
picture.
Yeah. There's also band turmoil in the recording. They at this point Steve is kind of
The drummer.
The drummer, he's kind of all the
He's just tired
the
of
battles,
touring.
the touring and stuff, and then this legal stuff happens. This is the first one of this album, right? So the album's not even out yet, or about to, and they already have to scrap the album and start, produce a whole new album art for it. That costs money. Then at that same time, there's a single on the album called Jack Pepsi, which...
And then Pepsi comes for their money. Fuck.
One of the artwork for the single was the Tad name in the Pepsi logo. And so at that time also a ex-employee of Sub Pop kind of got let go, and he was really upset about this. So the word on the street is that this ex-employee that was upset went and told Pepsi, hey, you might want to look into Sub Pop and this band Tad. So now Tad gets in trouble, ends up having to go through all this legal drama and grief.
What a fuckface.
And then right as all this is happening, Steve kind of quits because it's just, adding on top all of the drama. There's drugs, there's just everything.
Working with a musical genius that has his own vision and direction. And being a drummer, you're kind of like sometimes told what to do in that situation because it's like, I have an idea of what this needs to sound like. Plus, Tad being a drummer himself and going to school to play drums. Yeah, so
Tad was
very savvy probably
good.
when it came to the drum parts, if you will. And, it's just one of the things for a drummer. You have to meet that middle ground.
That was
with
the thing
songwriters.
too, is like, that was the story was he, Tad's telling him, hey, play it this way or do this. And it's like,
it's frustrating.
For the word was he lost the creativity and the spontaneity of his input as a band member dwindled because it became more of a, this is what the song is. You got to play this.
Yeah.
So all of that kind of pushed Steve out the door right as this album is being released and stuff.
And supposed to be blowing up.
It's
It's
blowing
supposed to be their fucking big break, quote unquote.
It got pulled off the shelf 2 weeks after release, and they were saying it's 4 to 6 weeks is when the album really sails and skyrockets.
And they're already fucked.
So they were
on
already
that
messed
deadline.
up.
Yeah.
So
And not being able to go on tour to promote the album because not having a drummer either was another thing. So they're kind of just stuck in this place with having to redo the album artwork and not having a drummer anymore because he just quit. That's 2. And then on top of that, Pepsi coming for their fucking money
so it's
because
just
of a song
after
title.
hit. It's
Fuck
like, oh my
you.
gosh. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And luckily,
What did they do to deserve this? No.
luckily, again, the scene is just about to break, so they're not suing them for millions and suing them into the dirt in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They still think they're kind
Well,
of.
they want the album to like sell big, and then they come and get their money. You know, it's
Exactly.
like, oh, this hit fucking platinum, and then they're like, cool, now I'm gonna take all that fucking money that you made.
Pepsi's thinking.
Same thing with those people on the front of the album artwork, the couple that were on there. They were thinking like,
This is,
this is
we're gonna make
blow up.
exactly.
Yeah.
We're gonna make millions off this, and it's
And
like,
it was like, no,
Ted's
the
like a
album's
small band.
Yeah. I mean, we're trying to sell albums,
Exactly.
but you're not making it fucking easy.
Yeah. And at the same time, it's like you can't try. Like you have to try, but not try, because if you do sell albums, they're gonna take the money. So it's
Yeah,
like,
so again, stuck. They were just stuck in this place. So another setback for one of the greatest bands of Seattle. And on that note, do you want to get into another song?
let's get into the next track, which will be. I think we're gonna go with. Bludge. Is that your pick?
Bludge? I believe it's the song before that.
Oh, Red Eyed Angel.
It's going to be track 4, Emotional Cockroach.
Gotcha. Yeah, this is a really good song too. This is the one with the metal banging.
Yeah, we have some industrial
Yeah, so
inspiration.
keep your ears open for that.
And that was just absolutely nuts. That was, it's like, are we still listening to the same band? You know, it was like, I don't even know. I was so happy because I had these thoughts in my head listening to it, and you know, listening to their older albums and just thinking like, man, this is so. And it has such an industrial feel, and you know, coming to their last album, they were like, we want to throw some industrial shit in there. I only wish that they could have went on and did more stuff because
Collaborations or something, you know what I mean?
Experimenting with more industrial sound
An
into a
Tad collaboration.
Oh man, that'd be fucking too sick, dude. So, leaving off on them getting fucked, again.
So that they get fucked with the whole Pepsi thing, and you know them and Mudhoney kind of leave Sub Pop around the same time. They both venture off, and at this time, like we said, Nirvana kind of helped everybody in the scene because Nevermind comes out around this time and it blows up. It's different from everything else, and
everyone wants that next
everybody
Nirvana
exactly
band. So all these Seattle bands are starting to get looked at, and major labels are starting to go around and sign.
Literally, if you were on Sub Pop, you were, you know, some of the first pickings for these big labels that came into town to swoop you up. And then if you're a small band that was on this little label, and then you get on a major label and they throw thousands upon thousands of dollars at you for your next record, and you're not used to it, you know, you're gonna do what like the guy Mark from Mudhoney did, and like I'm gonna go record my major at the same place I just recorded my last album at, and I'm gonna pocket the rest of the money because that's where I got my house.
It was so smart, and they were kind of left to their own devices there in the beginning to just do whatever, you know, like here's a bunch of money, do what you do.
They don't know, like the labels don't know,
and they don't know how to like interact with these bands because it's a very new sound, and this is a whole different scene, and they have no idea. The
like
record producers have no idea what is going on and what's happening. All they know is that they need to get these bands now.
They need to get them and let them do what they're doing because it's selling.
Yeah.
So, and you know, around that time they get picked up by Warner Music Group. They're
huge fucking label.
Giant Records. That's the label, but it's under Warner Music. So, so yeah, at that time, Steve had left, and they got this replacement drummer just for a little bit to fill in for that tour because they needed someone to play.
The drummer from Scratch Acid.
Yeah, Ray Washam, yeah.
Which is a great fucking drummer. Just coming in to fill in for the tour of the 8-way Santeria. Did I say that right?
Santa. So yeah, he was filling in for that. And then they had to later replace him in '91 with Josh Cinder, of The Accused, and he became the full time, at least up until for the rest.
Coming in, fucking big dick swinging, just
hitting
smashing
hard,
those drums,
smashing, playing fast,
going.
Yeah.
Which brings us to our next album, Inhaler. And that's around 94, 3?
That was in 93.
93. So kind of a little while, like a 2-year before we can get to the next album because of all the mishaps of the prior album. Finally getting the money because people know that they're a good band. So let's get them, sign them, and let's get them to make an album and forget about all those mistakes in the past. Yeah. And then what happens?
So, they do Inhaler. It's their sort of major label debut, you know what I mean? And they toured with Soundgarden to promote it, but the album really didn't do very well, at least in the beginning. You know, it kind of became that cult hit.
Well, they couldn't figure out why. The production is great. This album has one of their biggest hits, Greasebox, which we still get stuck in our heads today. And I mean, Spotify keeps telling me to listen to it. And and no one's fucking promoting the album for them on the other end.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, what's going on? Like, we got more buzz when it was just us being under fucking Sub Pop.
Mm-hmm.
Because at least Sub Pop went out and fucking promoted at shows. And
Got
what
a lot of
happened
promotion,
here,
yeah.
they're fucking AC, what is it, AR, or
So, yeah,
HCR, what do they call them?
That's
Fucking,
what's really messed up there is, so they get picked up by this major label. Right as they're about to do all the things, the A&R rep for the label got fired. And so at that time, if the rep got fired, all of those bands that the rep
They just dropped.
represented
Yeah.
got dropped. So they were among those bands. So they got dropped. And that was kind of after they got dropped while on tour with Soundgarden.
And that's just what record labels did. They probably didn't even listen to Tad's album at all, knowing what they had. It doesn't matter. The thing was that A&R director, they
got
think
fired.
had bad judgment.
Yeah.
That's why he got fired, since
was
we
a
don't
girl.
think she, apparently she wasn't doing her job anyways.
Yeah.
So
And the
just got
album
fucked on that.
The album was released as number 13 on Spin's 20 greatest grunge albums of all time. And then it also got 4 out of 5s and some B pluses. All Music praised Jay Mascis of Dinosaur Jr., who did the production on the album, and said it gets more focused and has a driven sound, and regarded the record as easily their best and most consistent album.
I could definitely, I know what he means by consistent. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Entertainment Weekly also said that album was alternative metal at its finest, bruising, ham-handed, and catchy as hell, and compared it to a poppier Helmet. So
I can, envision what they're saying, that same brutal bass and screeching guitar.
Yeah.
And it just, but they just have a little bit more harmony to them,
There's more harmony. Yeah, that was that album. That was their first.
Let's be clear. When they got dropped off this record label, they were in the middle of the tour, and they just pulled out the rug right underneath them. Just boom.
Yeah, that kind of also
on tour, just dropped everything. How are you even gonna get back from Europe? Like, pretty much leaving them trapped. Am I right?
Oh, sorry. I got the stories a little mixed up here. That A&R story is for Infrared.
We're bad at this.
Yeah, the Inhaler story, how they got dropped from that, wasn't the A&R rep. It was the Bill Clinton ad for the it's heavy as shit.
Oh, him smoking a joint.
Him smoking a joint and says, "This is some heavy shit," and it's the Tad promotion.
So this is what happens that since they're under Warner Brothers, one of the biggest record companies, they see some of those things that they're doing of what they did last time with the whole Pepsi thing, and putting our president, or soon to be, I believe he's president at this time, smoking weed on one of their things. It's just like, again, this is 1995. Moms are pissed.
Yeah, it wasn't even the band that did it.
Yeah,
it was
everyone's
Giant
blaming
Records, so.
music for anything that's wrong with their children. I mean, everything is under scrutiny at this point, all music, movies. It's just, this is where we get the rating system for movies as well, NY-17 and stupid shit like that.
Yeah.
But can't do stuff like that. Just too punk rock, too heavy metal for this label.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds cool. They sound like a rock and roll band. I'm like, fuck yeah, rebel. Don't, just be one of the normal bands and just fit in with the rest. So it doesn't. That's not who Tad is. It's not what makes him special.
No, I mean it was the promotional company that the record label had hired to create the marketing for the tour. So it's a classic somebody else responsible. It's kind of like this McDonald's documentary also that's kind of popular right now. Like they hired an outside source to handle the security of their contest, where it's like this Giant Records hired a promotional company to do the marketing for the Tad tour. This company comes up with this poster. It gets approved by the band. It gets approved. But
Because it's cool.
Yeah, because it's cool. And
It's rock and roll.
and it comes out, but I guess Giant Records wasn't doing their job. Warner wasn't. Somebody wasn't doing their
Someone
job.
didn't look at it
but-
before it got
Exactly.
out. And then, again, someone complained. And they were like, no, we're not going to be sued. You know, so they're going to fucking...
So yeah, that was.
So that's what happens with the Inhaler, them on a European tour. Warner Brothers just pulls out the carpet and they're fucking trapped in Europe
Yeah.
on this tour.
They released a live
Kicked off the
album
tour.
in '95, and then it's kind of like a best of live sort of thing.
So they're kind of just floating around after this, coming back, but still wanting to make music. And, you know, at this point, we're losing another member because of this same rigmarole.
It's just turmoil after turmoil. And
losing the
this is
record contract,
Thorsten's-
losing the tour. The album just
Yeah.
fucking vanishes almost because no one's pushing it
Nobody's
over there.
buying it.
Yeah.
Thorstenson left. But right after he left, they get their second major deal with East West / Electro Records, and which is another Warner label.
Well, I don't know if at this point Warner
Probably
bought them
not, yeah,
out. Yeah.
but,
But Elektra was kind of their own separate there for
Yeah.
a second, and they were buying out smaller record labels around them.
And that was '95 when they signed, and then they release the album we're celebrating today, Infrared, Riding Hood.
And this album is so interesting. So this is the story we kind of got fucked up on when they
This
got
is the A&R,
signed.
yeah.
By this
A month after the release, yeah.
right, and it was the what did they call them again? A&R.
A&R rep.
The A&R rep signing them from
Artist
Elektra.
and repertoire.
Oh, and they just go in there, and again, they give them some money, and they're left to their own devices. And what do? They just start jamming. They just start playing, and that's what they were saying in this documentary. Like every song is just off the top of their heads in a way.
Well, they're all
Not
also
writing
kind of
down
gagged
order
out.
forms,
At this point, you know, all the members
drugs,
are kind of
or
like
prevalent.
very prevalent. You know, they're all kind of like going through their own phases of like sleeping in or staying in all day, going out at
Well,
night.
they said, you know, like you play a show, you're on tour for the past 5 years, you get drunk every night because they put a bottle in the green room, and you wake up with a hangover, and you got to deal with that hangover.
Yeah,
What do you do?
exactly. So, I mean, the whole band is kind of going through this kind of weird
Yeah, it's just
mentality thing. So, you know, they
label dropping, drug use, touring.
Yeah.
Just when do we even, you know, start making money from all this kind of thing, or make a living, if anything?
Yeah, and that was kind of the start of the end with them. You know, the album kind of, like you said, they started out strong and not like unconventionally, where they just wrote songs and recorded them. They didn't go over order form.
They didn't go back
Or-
and try to critique. It was just
or-
what came out
yeah.
the first time around, and then they were like, fucking press play, record it, boom.
I'm gonna
done.
write to
Yeah.
whatever you did. We're not gonna. Yeah,
Yeah, go down and break down and talk about like, oh, is
Do
this
this 4
part,
times and
is
then-
this work for this?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you think this riff is good enough, or maybe we should switch it on? No, just straight out of nowhere. And I believe almost any band can do this, but I believe the problem would be is to play it again the same way you just did it, like that. It's like,
I think
whoa,
bands
just,
could do it. It sounds like they were
I can
really
go back
concise.
and relearn my shit. Yeah.
Like this one definitely didn't have it for, like you said, how often things change. Where you're like, whoa, wasn't expecting that.
Yeah,
It's-
they're just jamming it.
Yeah.
It feels like
And
just
it's-
coming up with it, and they're very unconventional, but
Yeah.
it just still sounds like a song.
This also showcases again Tad or Theodore, his musical genius, because it's all him. He's handling now all the songwriting, where it was passed between, you know,
Sorry about that, y'all. We got
Gary.
Jackie Boy in the background.
Gary and Tad. They would kind of, you know, head songwrite. Both of them really good guitar players in that sense.
Yeah.
And so that would be where
So this album is just a 3-piece.
it's just a 3-piece.
And pretty much it's like they're playing every song live on this album. Just go, roll the tape.
Mm-hmm.
and just fucking, it sounds huge, you know, even it being one guitar player.
Mm-hmm. And so that's where we get the end of the band. They put out this album. It's a work with
And they,
Jack and Dino again. It's Robert Lang Studios, which he has worked on Nirvana, Foo Fighters, Blood Brothers, Bush, kind of a 90s guy, you know.
making some of your best 90s rock albums.
Yeah, he was in they went to the studio. The Foo Fighters went back to that same studio in that show they did, Sonic Highways.
Oh, right.
So in they recorded the song Subterranean. That's the song they recorded at the studio.
In Seattle? Or
Um,
where are we at now?
It is in Washington, Shoreline, Washington.
Yeah, that's that house that was converted into a fucking a goddamn record studio. You know what I'm talking about? That house? It's kind of like dilapidated in the documentary Sonic Highway. They go and they're like a lot of stuff wasn't developed. They were like had plans to rebuild, so a lot of the ground is tore up.
We probably talked about it in the In
sinking.
Utero one.
Of
maybe.
course, because they go there to record, right?
That was the last
Like
studio that
famous place to record.
They did You Know You're Right at that studio. Last song
and it's really just a fucking old house. And we recorded a band recently, Spliff. They pulled out some music here this week, so definitely check it out. Spliff ATX .com. No, on Instagram. And it was they just had this old house, you know, that was built in war times. Everything's like low ceilings, the walls are real thick, and you just get this really good sound from it. For some reason, everything's just dampened the right way.
So yeah, they work with him, legendary studio, legendary producer. All that you would think everything's like, even though they've had all these setbacks, they're still riding high, pushing through. And then A&R rep gets fired. The album sells poorly, has literally no promotion. Yeah. You know, the day it comes out, there's no promotion. You know, it's kind of lackluster in that sense.
It's amazing that we had this album when we were younger. I guess it might have been at this point, you know, 2005 or something, re-released the album. Was there a massive backstock of them? Because I feel like we found it pretty easy.
That's why I think this album you can find pretty easy because of that. It didn't sell very well. So when Elektra mass produced a bunch of them getting up to release,
yeah,
then they drop them. They just put all these, now they're discounted dollar CDs.
Yeah, and the record stores are just buying them, you know, 2 at a time. You know, we had a lot of record stores here in Austin that, you know, cheapo discs, rest in peace. But
this CD was the one you would find.
Where we got it from. Yeah.
You know, yeah, cheapo. Exactly. Like it was the one that was around for some reason. I mean, I guess because of that, it didn't sell very well. There's a lot of copies floating around compared to the other Tad records.
Yeah, but, that and us being in Austin, which we have a pretty savvy music community and live shows and a lot of venues. We collect shit like that. So
yeah,
it's if we lived, I don't know, Plano, Texas, to find this album, probably wouldn't have been that easy.
Yeah,
15 years ago.
Well, that's kind of the end of
this tragic story
of the band. There, they do continue for a little bit after, just for a small period.
A few things here and there.
Not like releases, but yeah, like just kind of performing, you know.
After all this time, all these members still around. I mean, the members are still around.
Yeah.
Now bands can work on their own time, do their own thing. Tad could very easily, I can't even speak right now, very easily just make a new album and release it on the internet for free. You know, it's that day and age where bands can come back like this from getting fucked over for so many years, write an album, and probably go back on tour and play by their own rules and not have to deal with that whole record company bullshit, constantly on tour and then right back into the studio. Tour, right? We talk about this every episode when we talk about this time frame in music. But I would really like to hear Tad come back, you know, and write a new album because let's be honest, they were everyone listening right now, go and listen to any of their albums. These guys are just geniuses.
Yeah.
If you love this style of music, if you're a fan of rock and roll and just maybe just weird music in general or industrial, it's right up anyone's alley. Metalhead, punk rocker, you name it, you know.
Then that was they finished that album. Cinder left the band he played the remainder of the year, but then left. He started a band, Hot Rod Lunatics.
Cool.
And then he was replaced on drums by Mike Mongrain from Foil, and that's kind of played with him for the remainder of their existence. They did They did a final single called Oppenheimer's Pretty Nightmare, Accident on the Way to Church. And that was in 1998 on Up Records, and then a year later they finally dissolved and called it quits.
Just couldn't keep it going.
And then we'll get into a little bit more of the post stuff, like what they're doing now.
Yeah.
After we go through another song, I think.
Yes, let's get to another song. Enough of us rambling. If you guys are like what you listen to, please follow us on Instagram at BANGover Productions. It's the same for our YouTube page, BANGover Productions. Go subscribe, like, click the bell. I don't know, just you like what we like.
Yeah.
Follow
This
us.
is going to be Bludge. Pick this one, right?
Another one of those industrial sounding songs that are just like grinding gears. I love it.
The streets of blood, your shoes will burn. Give the killers on the loose. Like gargoyles, burst outside. Radioactive, albino wide. The stars will hurt your giant eyes. Your arms will bleed aside this time. Tell about the Christ to demonstrate our eyes. And implant in my side, I got a parasite. Your gang will be insane. The world fate really tame. No matter how fast or far. Blood will soak your rusted jaw. The stars will hurt your giant eyes. Your hearts will bleed aside this time. Tell about the Christ. You demonstrate our eyes. And implant in my side, I got a parasite. Tell about the Christ. You demonstrate our eyes. And implant in my side, I got a parasite. Sunspots on my mind. See no Market guy. Intravenous Christ.
And we're back. That was one of I don't know. It's all the songs on this album were so good. It was really hard just to pick like four. Like towards the end of this album, which we were just playing songs off the beginning. Where I think that was song 6. Yeah,
There's a total of 12. So
it just
about halfway,
gets
yeah.
heavier and heavier. It feels like just crazier down the rabbit hole. I fucked up and listened to the wrong album. Shout out to the Salt Lick because that coming out in April as well. It's its anniversary kind of thing, but this being their last album, and just
25-year.
It's so fucking cool just to go in there and like jam this out. Like again, who does that? Go in there and just write everything off the top of your head and throw it there, and you're like, cool, album's done, printed. This is a lost gem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is like one of those things that thank you Spotify for keep shoving it in my face, because for me, I just don't go and click likes to bands I've already listened to because I'm afraid you're going to keep throwing me more stuff like that. I'm trying to find something new, but even Spotify is like, hey, if you like this style of music, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, I'm going to say even bands like Faith No More and just metal in general, probably, you like rock and roll. This is up your alley. This is going to be one of those bands you're going to fall in love with because how heavy was that last song we just listened to? And then the chorus being so
catchy
and rock and roll and actually singing and then going to like this super distorted bass, every time. It's addicting in some ways. It's the best combination of something like this. Me personally, and I know you can leave comments in any of these on Spotify, anywhere, and just be like, you're fucking stupid. I'm not really the biggest fan of Dinosaur Jr. Seeing them live is definitely the best way to fall in love with Dinosaur Jr., but for me, I just didn't like that lighthearted sound, I'm more of a metalhead. So this is definitely the band I would love just to like, this is the band I could be like, oh, this
it's like a heavier
version,
like it'd be a heavier Dinosaur Jr., whereas it would also, like they were saying, a poppier Helmet, like kind of in that middle now,
right?
Where Helmet's like too heavy and Dinosaur's too soft. So
and even in my opinion, I own a lot of those Helmet albums. I'm not the biggest fan of that. I like Korn. I like Rob Zombie. I'm Marilyn Manson.
Yeah,
that's what I was kind of more into at that time. It's just now opening up to more things. Knowing the album Inhaler very well, and even this album as well, just as well in some ways, because these were the two albums that we had when we were, in high school and we used to pass around. Going back and be able to listen to those like Salt Lick and those early albums is just awesome because I'm falling in love with it again. I'm becoming like more of a fan. Like I always loved Tad, but now I'm like really falling in love because of this episode, really, because I got to sit down and listen to it. And I'm like, I had no idea they had this like type of like grindy sound, All I really knew was mainly Inhaler, and then forgetting this album almost altogether because it was just like, oh right, that was one of those. There's so many albums out there. It's easy to forget, but to go back and be able to,
but I think it's
cause attention to it
history
once more
played out. Like you know what I mean, like it didn't get the mass,
but it holds up over time.
But it holds up musically, but it kind of glanced over everyone's radar because of that. Because of there weren't any
record labels, drug use. No. Just a bad roll of the dice.
At that time, also like the 90s. That's a soundtrack era. You know what I mean? Like if you could get your song in a movie,
then everyone's gonna hear it.
Everyone's gonna hear it.
Yeah,
and like so. I mean, they never got that opportunity, whereas a lot of their peers did.
Right?
How many Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, Nirvana, Mudhoney, name them, and they're in music. They're in pop culture. Tad would have been right there.
Exactly.
Right there. They have the music.
They should have been right there, and they were the best of all those bands when it came to banter on stage, just being a cool group of guys to like hang out with, essentially, and just geniuses at writing songs, like look at all these songs that are kind of like lost that maybe a lot of people don't know about.
That are really good.
It's sad in some ways, and this is why we do this podcast and talk about albums like this. We had a list of like 40 albums, but we knew we had to pick Tad because they were a cult classic and a lot of people don't know about it. If we can do one thing on this podcast is maybe give you something you haven't heard before, or give you an idea where to find some of this stuff.
Or not, because not a lot of people are talking about it. You want to hear people talk about it because not You know what I mean? You want to consume more. You want to hear people talk about the album you love,
Right.
especially if it's a small album and not a lot of. You know what I mean? You want to
Yeah.
converse. You want to talk about these things, and
You listen to something, you fall in love with
Yeah.
an album, and you want to go out and tell your friends about it, right? You're like, have you heard this? This is
Exactly.
fucking awesome. That's one thing about music. It's more genuine than when someone's like, oh, this movie's awesome, you should watch this, you know, and people hype it up and you watch it, you're like, I don't know what everyone's big fucking deal about, you know? But music is a little different because it's something you imagine in your mind when you listen to it. You have a different picture than someone else, you know? Instead of someone showing you what they want you to see, you're able to see what you are envisioning, or, you know what I'm getting at?
yeah,
It's just, I feel more genuine going and being like, dude, you have to listen to this album, more so than being like, this movie is
Go watch
so
this
good,
movie, yeah.
fucking listen to this. I don't know, maybe it's just me being a music nerd, but I would suggest this to anyone. And oh my god, like these everyone should go out and just watch like interviews with Tad. They're awesome and hilarious, and just as good as watching, like we talk about, like watching interviews with like Lemmy or you know, Gibby Haynes. It's just,
they were like fun group. So yeah,
it's such a rock and roll personality, such a mind, you know. It's a shame that most people don't know, and I know we keep saying that, but it's like, how the fuck, you know? Especially a band that was like, everyone was like, that band kicks ass, and they just get fucked.
yeah. Well, coming to current times, after they broke up, Tad did form some other bands. Hog Molly, which is a band he formed. Other members kind of went and did their other stuff too. Let's see. They did do a reunion in 2013,
Oh,
which was a partial reunion. In that documentary we watched, it was, I believe, Kurt and Tad, who hadn't seen each other in like 7 years or something.
jeez.
And so yeah, they had got together, and that was for that documentary. But then and sorry, looking through here. In the 2013 reunion though, it was for Sub Pop's 25th anniversary. So, given Tad being a huge staple in the Sub Pop family,
Right.
they were, did a partial semi reunion there where they played songs from God's Ball, Salt Lick, and 8-Way Santa. But they had, it was just Tad and Gary. So Gary wasn't in the documentary, but he agreed.
this
He did the
reunion.
reunion, and everybody else that was in the documentary wasn't in the reunion. So who knows what's going on there? But yeah, Brothers of Sonic Cloth played the filled in. The Brothers of the Sonic Cloth. It is, but they
So just filled in.
filled in bass and drums for them, and yeah, I mean, partial set in 2000, partial reunion in 2013, which was 7 years ago. So chances, maybe 30, probably maybe
yeah.
the 35th anniversary, 40th. If everyone's still around, you may get something at the Sub Pop reunion.
I would love to hear another album. Please, everyone go out and check out live performances as well by this band, because they're fucking nuts on stage. It's going to be hard to do that, maybe being a little bit older, like in your 50s, and just not be able to like throw your body like that on stage without throwing your back out.
It would be
That's
cool.
the only downside, but I'm sure they are more refined as musicians at this point, and another album would be fucking tits,
Metal Injection in 2017 ranked them as number 5 on the top 10 heaviest grunge bands. So just another.
Who else was above that? I mean, Melvins,
it doesn't. I mean, the Melvins, maybe. You know what I mean? You get like
who else?
That's where it starts to get really like that. Like it does. There really isn't very much heavier than Tad. Then I can only think of like the Melvins, and that's because they don't. Whenever their choruses come, they don't go catchy. That'd be the only.
Yeah, they're kind of like they could just make a whole catchy song or just be insanely metal or 8-minute long songs. They kind of just do whatever they want to. Hence why we love bands like this.
There's a little bit more focus to it. It's like, there's a song here.
There's a song, there's an idea, their personality,
That too. I think the personality really comes through.
Yeah.
Lyrics, imagery, all the, all the album covers.
Everything was so cool and rock and roll and and funny and please go and check out this goddamn documentary.
But then it, just like all that, like you're trying to have some fun and take the shit out of things.
Yeah, and people are like, this guy's
piss
crazy.
Out of it or whatever, and it's like, oh, it's just Bill Clinton with the.
And nowadays, no one's gonna be pissed off about that one.
I could see why at that time it's like.
It's just.
It was pretty edgy.
The time we were in, and rock and roll just has like a fucking lens on it from society, and I'm gonna say it, fucking Christians, goddamn. But I just really hope I get to hear something else, and I'm gonna definitely check out these other bands he was in because I'm sure it's gonna be messy and noisy and just fucking gushing and dripping with just emotion and I just there's so many words that I can say about their sound that are just going over my head. I can't think of anything. I'm just like, just listen to it for God's sakes.
Yeah, go listen to that. Their newest thing, it came out 2 years ago, but it was Quick and Dry, which is that live album, or Quick and Dirty. But yeah,
definitely gonna check out that live album. I hope there's some clarity because they are just fucking. You think this is heavy? It's way heavier live. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So definitely looking forward to checking that out. And do we have any other fun facts? I mean, definitely check out this documentary. It's very entertaining.
Yeah, that came out in 2008, so that has basically all the information up until the reunion.
Right, in 2013. And, we'll see.
Hopefully,
we have these albums that will stand the test of time, in my opinion.
I really would like to hear something new. I'm sure it would be heavy as balls.
And just going back and, like, listening to those other albums again, like 8-Way Santa, I didn't really get to ingest that album, just a brief listen through, just to have some reference to older stuff. But going back and listening to that, I got a lot of stuff on my plate.
Yeah,
I got some shit like I should be like saving and like okay, cool. Like when I have some fucking time to sit down and put this on, really dive in and get an idea of like a different way of writing songs. Me and Chris here have been. We're on quarantine. We're recording this right now in an underground bunker here in Austin, and we have just a lot of time on our hands. So we've been jamming a lot and talking about song structure and stuff. And we do this episode on Tad, and it's opening up my eyes to see that almost any possibility is out there. You know what I mean? It's just like your conviction and how you sell it. Mm-hmm. You can do whatever you want.
It doesn't have to be overly complicated. It has to sound good.
And so again, it just has to, resonate in some way. But I heard this great quote the other day from Dave Grohl, and it was just saying, like, what makes a catchy song? And they did this, whole, like, research or what do you call those? Like a college does a trial or like a study. There it is. A study on what makes a catchy song, and things have to fall into these certain quadrants. And when something does hit that quadrant, a lot of bands start sounding alike because catchiness and what is being heard. So someone hears something like Nirvana, and then everyone's going to try to start, just reaching out to find more of that style of sound. And it's not just bands that are just making it up. It's just what is in the air and the atmosphere at that time. So you're going to get a lot of that same sound and it doesn't mean that these bands are necessarily writing or making up songs to sound like this because of what is selling. It's just what is at this moment. You know, it's just the time
It's
stamp.
the sound of that.
Yeah, and it being the 90s and where everyone's head was. You know, it has to do with a lot of that.
Yeah,
And,
there's a lot.
you know, we get a lot of great artwork from just what's going on in society, you know, and things around a band and how they, you know, ingest it and regurgitate it is fascinating because, you know, anyone can write a song, really. It's just, is it the right time? Is it the right time for this song?
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what it comes down to. It was the right time for Tad, but just fucking record producers, and when it comes to money and the politics behind it, I mean,
Yeah.
hence why we didn't have a lot of bands go after their magnus opus of albums, you know? It's just kind of the time, and we live in a better time now when it comes to music, so that's why I'm saying we really hope something comes from Tad. Please go back and listen to all their albums. Music videos are fucking insane, too. They have quite a bit.
They do have a lot of music videos.
And they're just kind of like handheld camera music videos.
Cool. Yeah.
And
The one with
they're really thought out.
On
the chair, on the car,
chair,
yeah.
Filming that, if you in that documentary, there's like a behind the scenes of them filming it. It looked like
it was
the
real.
Scariest
yeah,
shit.
they didn't have any permits to do that.
They're just.
I was wondering if he was like chained down to that car, but he's like standing on the hood. It is like Teen Wolf. He's like fucking surfing. I was like, holy shit! And they were like, "Did you see that cop that was behind us?" And I was like, "Wait, you didn't have a permit to do this?" Oh,
and they're on a major at this point too. This was like for Inhaler or something.
Oh, it's just what a fucking fun band. Just let them fucking be, you know? Yeah. Oh my god.
Correction, Brothers of the Sonic Cloth is another one of his bands.
Oh, so well, there you go. Yeah. That makes sense. They would fill in. So again, please follow us on all the things. Like, subscribe, follow BANGover Productions. Type it in, Google it, you'll find us. And we have more episodes coming up. Hopefully we're going to get out of this bunker pretty soon. We're back to the rest of the world and start playing live shows, get out there, but more podcasts to come, different podcast ideas for more shows coming up, movies, maybe like breakdowns of music videos. I know we've talked about like this Ozzy thing for a while.
Yeah.
It's something that, you know, we're going to have to get into. And, yes, again, thank you all for listening. And what song are we ending it on?
We're going to end it with one of my favorites on the album, and it's Dementia. But this one is not going to be a heavy one, per se. This is going to be like a super catchy Tad song. This is kind of like the other side. The other spectrum of Tad.
Right.
Like the soft, sensitive side of Tad, but like still catchy. Like you could hear this being played at 11, and you're like, oh my god, kind of that Dinosaur Jr. philosophy. It's like it's soft, but
loud.
I'm gonna play
loud
it fucking
folk
loud.
Rock.
So
loud folk rock.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's dig into that. And thanks everybody.
Again, I'm Scott Allen. This is Chris Myers. BANGover Productions podcast.